The NEET controversy continues to rage across the country. The government has now appointed a high-level committee which will probe the irregularities in the conduct of NEET. But we still do not have any further details of who's going to be part of this committee, what the timelines of this committee are going to be. And because for the retest, as far as the 1,560-odd students who got grace marks is concerned, that retest is going to happen this Sunday. And then counseling for all the qualified students, which runs into lakhs, that begins next Sunday. And this committee is yet to hit the ground running. Also, there is no relief by way of the courts that's coming for these students, because the next hearing is on the 8th of July, by which time you would have had a little more than a week of NEET counseling already completed. Meanwhile, today the Congress party took out a nationwide protest, and while the principal opposition party is well within its right to hold the government to account, is it in the best interests of the students who've been affected? Should we not avoid politics on such a sensitive issue which deals with the future of our children, and instead allow the investigation, whether it's in Bihar or in Gujarat or in Haryana, to reach its logical conclusion and apprehend the culprits?
सरकार मेरिटियस विद्यार्थियों के साथ खड़ा है। सरकार विश्वास जन्माना चाहती है कि हम कोई भी गड़बड़ी को टॉलरेट नहीं करेंगे।
राहुल जी ने यही तो कहा, 3 बड़े मुख्य केंद्र हैं घोटाले के, शिक्षा घोटाले के। उत्तर प्रदेश, मध्य प्रदेश और गुजरात, तीनों बीजेपी शासित राज्य हैं।
राज्य में सरकार उनकी, केंद्र में सरकार उनकी, जांच एजेंसियां उनकी। हम ही कहते हैं मुख्यमंत्री जी को बुला ले मेरे साइड को, अरे चाहे पीए हो, पीएस हो, कोई हो, बुला करके पूछताछ कर ले।
All right, let's go straight across to our guests, both political as well as those in the field of education, now joining us. First, Sanju Verma is national spokesperson of the BJP, Salman Soz, spokesperson of the Congress party, Zubin Malhotra is a career coach and counsellor, Professor V. Ram Gopal Rao is Group Vice Chancellor of BITS Pilani and former director of IIT Delhi. Sanju Verma, the moot point is this: if the reason to cancel UGC-NET was that the question paper was compromised, as the Education Minister said yesterday, even in the case of NEET, it's evident now that the question paper was compromised, whether in Bihar or in Gujarat or in Haryana. Why aren't you cancelling NEET and having a retest?
Zaka, as you started at the start of your show by saying that, there is the case of first 1,563 students who will have to take a retest this Sunday. And these are the 1,563 students who had gotten grace marks. And there was a hue and cry that was unfair to the others who actually, got their marks on the basis of merit. So point number one, the two issues are very different. The UGC-NET is very different from the NEET exam, which was held on the 5th of May this year, a couple of weeks back. Point number two, as far as the NEET exam goes, there is a Supreme Court hearing on the 8th of July. And all the petitions, there are some 14 or 15 odd petitions which will be bunched together and heard simultaneously by the Supreme Court, so that there is no delay on the steps to be taken going forward. So this is basically a case that is sub judice. Point number three, if you look at what Dharmendra Pradhan has been saying over the last 24 or 36 hours, he was asked exactly the same question: if UGC-NET could be cancelled, then why not NEET, which happened on the 5th of May this year? His response is simple, that the two things are completely different. In the case of the NEET exam held on the 5th of May, it is a question of only 1,563 students who have basically complained that why are grace marks being taken away. And there are some who are saying grace marks should not have been given in the first place, because this is being unjust to the others who've not got the benefit of grace marks. So I think you cannot compare apples with oranges. But one thing I'm very sure of, the fact that the interests of the students will not be compromised, be it the NEET exam, be it the UGC-NET exam. And once the Supreme Court takes a decision on the 8th of July, I think the path forward will be much clearer,
No,
and you will have greater clarity.
I just want you to clarify this. Are you suggesting that the erroneous part or the errant or deviant part as far as this year's NEET exam is concerned is confined to just this 1,563? That the rest of the 23 or what 23 lakh plus students who took it, there is nothing deviant or erroneous in the manner in which the exam was conducted for them?
There are a couple of things, which are the deviant factors here. Zaka, I'm not going to brush things under the carpet, though this is a political debate, and it would be great to give some political arguments. But let me be, very clear. The first deviant factor is this bunch of 1,563 students who got grace marks. Whether that should have happened or not happened, we will find out, because they are sitting for a retest on the 23rd of this month, that is on Sunday. Point number 2, the deviant factor is that sample papers were available on the dark web and dark net. And this is with respect to the NEET exam. I'm not even talking about the UGC-NET, which Dharmendra Pradhan has admitted to. Apparently, some sample papers were available on social media handles and Telegram channels as well. So there will be a full-fledged probe, and that is precisely the reason that Pradeep Joshi, who currently heads the NTA, he is heading a task force to probe into the fact as to whether the deviant factor was limited to 1,563 students. Was it limited only to the 67 students, all of whom got full marks, 720 out of 720?
Okay.
Was this limited to only a few centers in Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Gujarat, or was this a pan-India phenomena? So I think let there be a full-fledged probe, but at this point in time, we are having a retest only for 1,563 students.
Salman Soz, there are two parts to my question. One is it right, is it fair? Yes, you have every right to hold the government to account, hold the NTA to account. After all, the future of students is concerned. But now that there is a high-level panel that's been instituted, inquiries are on in Bihar, in Gujarat, in Haryana, is it right to politicize this further and further, because this is happening at the cost of students, number one. Number two, also to the specific charge that as far as the Bihar part is concerned, there is a gentleman by name Sikandar Yadvendu who seems to be emerging as the mastermind, at least of the Bihar part of this scam. And he has links with a gentleman called Preetham, who happens to be a PS of your ally Tejashwi Yadav. So please respond to both of those.
Zaka, first of all, the real issue in front of us is the future of the young people of this country. This government has basically failed it on all fronts in terms of getting young people jobs, any kind of opportunity. When they go for exams, their papers are leaked. When they go for recruitments, the papers are leaked. When they go for a scheme like Agniveer, basically which curtails their future in the military, this government, the Modi government, this NDA government has created hopelessness for young people in this country. And that's the real issue. That's the real issue. Politics is just a way of representing people. We've been elected, our party's been elected, others have been elected to represent people. Among those people is the future of India, the young people of this country. They're in pain. If they're in pain, should we not speak up? Should we not strengthen their case? They have a legitimate case. 23 to 24 lakh candidates in just one exam are suffering right now because there is no clarity. I know the BJP spokesperson will say that this is about 1,500 cases, this is deviant, that is not deviant. There is some person in Bihar who's responsible for all this stuff. That's not the issue here. The issue is the credibility. The credibility which lies in tatters of the NTA.
Okay.
Of the government which appointed these people onto the NTA. And by the way, people may be interested to find out why these kinds of things are happening. Because we have an unaccountable government, Zaka. You know it. Everybody knows it. Every few days now, we have train accidents and people get killed. And the same minister is brought in again. And there is no accountability and nobody says anything. Now these young people are being affected. If we don't speak up, who's going to speak up? We encourage the young people of this country.
Okay, can you respond to the second question that I
just
asked about Tejasvi
yes,
Yadav, and then I need to go to the two
Yes,
career counselors. Yes.
I will. I want the young people of this country to just watch this debate and other debates. What you will find on the part of the government and the BJP is basically trying to deflect attention from this very serious issue. They'll say, Bihar mein koi hai, Tejasvi Yadav ke jaan pehchan wale, unhone kiya hai. Nahin. This has been done by Prime Minister Modi by appointing incompetent people to run some of the most critical tests in this country. And this politicization of education, look at all the vice chancellors that they've been appointing, RSS people, BJP people. We need competence. We need expertise. And what you see in front of you, Zaka, is politicization of education that is hurting
let me go across to Zubin Malhotra as well as Dr. Ram Gopal Rao. Zubin Malhotra, prior to NEET, we had a whole bunch of different exams, different institutes had different exams. AIIMS used to have an exam. I know JIPMER used to have an exam. Various medical institutes around the country used to have exams. At last count, I think there were about 20 odd, or maybe even more than that. So no one is arguing against the need to have one centralized test. I agree with the rationale of that. The question is the NTA capable enough of conducting that? As I understand, the NTA is not even a statutory body. It does not have either governmental oversight or even Parliament's oversight. Should not a competent body, a body that has the powers, the financial resources, and of course the human resources of the government to back it, to actually conduct this exam?
The NTA conducts multiple exams, I think at last count close to 24, impacting easily 50 lakh students at various levels for admissions and entrances, right from the future health service professionals of our country to undergraduate admissions to what have you. So if there are gaps and capability gaps and process gaps, which certainly there are, I see no reason why in a country like ours that can produce top-notch both public and private sector organizations, capabilities, educational institutions, that this organization cannot conduct foolproof examinations. There will still be lapses, and at every opportunity that this lapse occurs is an opportunity to improve those lapses and make the system more foolproof. Just another point. The issue with the NEET is not just 1,500 odd students who've been awarded grace marks. If that was so, it's very easy to dial back those grace marks that were awarded. Yeah. It's not that they were awarded extra time and so therefore the exam process has been vitiated. If you look at the last 5 years data, there is huge mark inflation. There are over 67 students who have scored 720 marks, full marks on the paper, which has never happened in the history of the NEET. At every score level, there are students which are in 5 or 10 times the average of the last 5 years who have scored. So simply conducting a retest for a minuscule fraction of those students who are affected is a travesty. It is an injustice to 24 lakh plus students, and it's a travesty to the medical profession because, mind you, these are the students 15-20 years you and I will be going to seek medical health assistance and advice. The process should be not just be fair but appear to be fair, and the only way that this can be done is conducting a retest. I don't see why the government can't take a stand in the Supreme Court, and unfortunately now it is sub judice, so it cannot be just a unilateral government decision, that we think that the process has been vitiated, it is not fair to everyone, and we propose that we will conduct a retest with sufficient oversight. If it means that NTA is not the body to do it at this time around, hand it over to the UPSC as a special for just this year.
I was just going to ask Professor Ram Gopal Rao that. It's not like we see exam paper leaks in every competitive exam in this country. UPSC is a great example of how we hardly ever hear of the UPSC paper leaking. Even in the case of IIT JEE, very rarely do you hear of the JEE paper leaking. Even in the case of the IIM exams, what used to be earlier the CAT exam, again, you don't hear of the paper leaking at least as often as we are hearing with NEET. So is the problem with the agency that's testing it? Is the problem with the private agencies that it employs to at the back end? Or is it the problem of these coaching centers? Where does the problem lie? Because this seems to be particularly endemic in some categories of competitive exams, but not necessarily in all.
Exactly. I think your question itself contains the answer. If government needs to organize this exam, it has to be a UPSC kind of a model, a constitutional body with members, with academicians managing the entire thing and with complete independence. I mean, who gives the grace marks and who decides, how to give those grace marks? In the IIT JEE advanced exam, all 23 IITs, the representatives will sit together across a table, and those decisions are taken by the JEE body, which consists of all these IITs, not by randomly by, some bureaucrat thinking, something at some point in time. I think, this is what needs to be done. If you need, say, government body to conduct this exam, it has to be a UPSC kind of a body we need to create. And if it is academic institutions, right, why is it that the JEE advanced exam or even the GATE exam at one point, was 13 lakh students, 14 lakh students, used to take that exam. IITs manage that entire examination entirely on their own. How does it happen? There the faculty members get involved from day one. There is an ownership. I mean, our entire integrity, our entire reputation depends on that examination from start to finish, from setting the paper to finally conducting the examination and evaluation and all of that. Everywhere the IIT faculty are there, day and night, managing that entire examination.
Sanju Verma, I want to bring your attention to the point that Professor Rao made, that the NTA are not a stakeholder in this exam. They are not a bunch of doctors or medical professionals or people, academics involved in the medical field who are a stakeholder in this profession. Earlier, when we used to have the medical tests, AIIMS used to have its own test, JIPMER used to have its own tests, other medical colleges used to have its own tests. Today, we have a dozen odd AIIMS in this country. Why can't all of them, doctors, teachers, people who are part of the medical field of these AIIMS, come together? And why not this be a sort of standardized test in which academics / doctors, people in the medical profession are involved, as opposed to an NTA, which, like I said, does not have A, oversight, and B, are not stakeholders. They're not from the medical profession.
Okay, Zaka, first and foremost, I think, Zubin Malhotra, Mr. Chauhan and Professor Rao, they all made some very pertinent points. I will get to the politics of it later on because the Congress panelists made some spurious and reckless allegations. I'll deal with them in a bit. But coming to the more important point, let's be very clear about one thing. The NTA was set up as a society way back under the Societies Registration Act of 1860. But it actually got teeth only when it became an autonomous body as recently as 2017. And it is an autonomous body, albeit not a statutory one, and directly comes under the aegis of the Education Ministry, which is currently headed by Dharmendra Pradhan, no less. So to say that the NTA does not have any oversight by virtue of not being a statutory body, I think that is not completely correct, because the Education Ministry does have, the responsibility and does look at what the NTA is up to or not up to. Point number two. I'm not saying that the NTA has not seen lapses. I mean, that is there for everyone to see. Your audience is smart enough. But are we going to throw the baby along with the bathwater? Because you have every right. And when I say you, I also include myself. I include all the stakeholders. We all have children, who want to get into higher learning. We are not just spokespeople of political parties. We are stakeholders by virtue of being citizens. We are stakeholders by virtue of being bona fide parents. We are stakeholders by virtue of being teachers, students, so on and so forth. But let's be very clear. The NTA has to buckle up. Having said that, don't forget, Zaka, this is one important point that nobody has touched upon. The NTA currently conducts the JEE main exams. It conducts NEET-UG. It conducts GPAT. It conducts CMAT. And it conducts the UGC-NET, which means that in a given year, the NTA conducts competitive entrance examinations for higher education for at least 10 to 12 million students, 1 to 1.2 crore students. And am I saying that, oh, because they conduct exams for 1 to 1.2 crore students, so what if 1,563 cases came about where grace marks were given? So what if 67 students got full 720 out of 720 in the NEET exam? No, every student matters. But having said that, let us not lose sight of a sense of proportion. The NTA needs to be strengthened. The governing body of the NTA needs to have experts and professionals from various fields. But to say that the NTA has not done a half decent job, I think that is something that I will not endorse. And my last point to the Congress spokesperson, when you sit here and give lectures to the BJP, you forget that from 2008 to 2023, in those 15 years, for 10 long years, it was Congress's Ashok Gehlot who was the chief minister in Rajasthan. And in those 10 years, under the incompetent Gehlot dispensation, there were more than 36 leaks, which means more than 3 leaks every single year on an average. And need I remind the Congress panelists that while the BJP will do what it needs to do, how is it that Priyanka Vadra was actually endorsing the case of Ayushi Patel, whom the Delhi High Court found culpable of forgery? And Priyanka Vadra did not have the decency to take down that post on
Salman
Twitter.
Soz, the larger point being, you know, when an agency conducts tests for anywhere between 10 to 12 million students every single year, in a country as big as ours, as complex as ours, there will be 1 or 2 leaks here and there. And you and your party by no means is above board on this, because just 6 months ago, we saw what happened in Rajasthan. There was a massive paper leak and there were street side protests and so on. So it's not like, you know, Congress-ruled governments have done any greater job or any better a job than what is happening right now.
Zaka, I would basically tell your audience that when they listen to us, when they watch this debate, they should listen more to people like Mr. Malhotra, Mr. Rao, and Mr. Chauhan, because these are the experts who have their best interests in mind. As far as Sanju Verma's or Rajasthan, you guys did these are deflective tactics. These are things which we can just swat away. It's like a fly, you can swat it away. But, you know, if you look at the Vyapam scam in Madhya Pradesh, an ongoing scam that has 50 people were killed who were associated with that scam. Where did it happen? In Madhya Pradesh, ruled by BJP. I don't want to get into that kind of a debate with Sanju Verma, because that is not of interest to the people who are affected by this tragedy right now. The tragedy that has befallen the young people of this country, 23 to 24 lakh kids. This is not about 1,500 people. Again, like Mr. Malhotra also said, this is not about 1,500 people. This is about 23 to 24 lakh people. These people have worked hard for a year, maybe 2 years, preparing for this examination, and this examination's credibility is zero. The credibility is zero. So is the credibility of the National Testing Agency. So is the credibility of Prime Minister Modi's government.
Reckless allegations.
What exactly?
Stop making reckless allegations. Talk about Tejaswi involvement.
Let me, one second, let me move away from the political spokespersons for 1 second. Let me bring back Mr. Malhotra and Professor Rao. So, Zubin Malhotra, we have a very difficult situation on hand where you are convinced that the integrity of this exam has been compromised, rank inflation, the number of people getting full marks, 720 that is, and so on, has been completely inflated according to you. But you have a situation where these 1,500 odd kids are going to take the exam this Sunday. The counselling begins from next Sunday, and the court will not hear this matter until the 8th of July. So that's about 3 weeks from now, by which time already about a week plus days of counselling would have gotten over. At that stage, would it even be practical or feasible to order a retest of the entire 20 odd lakhs who took this test?
In all probability, no, but unfortunately, that's the way things are going. And, the worry is that just like during the lockdown and COVID, you had a moniker which was a COVID batch, this lot of students who are going to get into medical school will be known as the paper leak batch. And that's not a tag, whether in jest or seriousness, that you actually want. Very simple things. I understand today that a review is being conducted into the entire process by the chairman of the body who is supposed to conduct this. I mean, those are simple things that the government can do to try and restore some trust into into this organization and into this test taking process. You cannot have the chairman of the NTA conducting a review into how the NTA has handled this whole exercise. Why cannot an independent body or an agency do this?
Okay.
Now, why
no,
not
I think yesterday's announcement by the
preparing to
minister was that
reconduct
there
the
will be
NEET?
a high-level committee. We don't know the composition of that committee. I would assume that there are outside professional
Zaka, the
experts
point-
who will
Zaka, the-
judge as part of that committee.
Zaka, the point is all of this is trying to affix blame. All of this is trying to. There's also political grandstanding. But are these decisions being taken with 24 lakh NEET aspirants at the center of this thought process? My worry and fear is that it's not.
Professor Rao, if you were to fix this problem, where would you start?
I think it's a very complicated problem to fix right now, but I think we need to understand. I think the time is essence here. I mean, you need to, whatever we decide, we need to decide quickly because children are under stress. They don't know what is happening and what will happen to their careers. I think one needs to look into the entire process, why there is a grade inflation and or the marks inflation, the rank inflation this year. I think that needs to be understood first. I don't think that is because of these 1,600 students getting a grace marks. I think once we understand why there is a rank inflation this year, once we get to know that, I think many things probably can be understood. For example, in the southern part of India, in the Telugu states, the two Telugu states, last year in the NEET exam, there were apparently 3 or 4 students who got full 100% marks. This year also only 3 or 4 students got the full 100% of marks. So what it means is in those two states, probably nothing much would have happened, like what happened in the other parts of the country.
Okay.
Suddenly, some states this year, earlier year there were 3 or 4 toppers, but this year there are suddenly, 60 or 70 toppers. I think that needs to be investigated thoroughly.
I believe in Jhajjar in Haryana, in one examination center, there were 6 students who got 720 out of 720. But we'll leave it at that. I want to give Mr. Chauhan the final word. What then is the solution, Mr. Chauhan? Because ultimately, we've all been saying the future of 23 lakh students is at stake here. Do you just abolish the NTA? Do you get some other body to conduct these exams? Because I keep going back to that point. I agree with the rationale of having one testing agency as opposed to, multiple testing agencies, different institutes having different tests, etc., etc. But how do you then strengthen that agency? Is it NTA itself, or do you think NTA needs to be abolished and some other body should take its place?
I don't know whether abolition of one agency and creating another agency can be the solution. The problem is that we need to find out in the most pedagogic manner that why do we need a centralized examination like NEET? The earlier system was working well, but then if for some reason you need to have centralized examination, then you need to have elaborate system. The first thing that government can do is take the responsibility, not just the administrative responsibility, but also the financial responsibility of an agency. Do you know that the NTA charges 1,600, 1,500 rupees for net examination and other examination, and it has a mandate that it has to do it on the basis of its earnings. So obviously it end up doing corner cuttings and things like that. It has to be the government responsibility to conduct examination, and government should take financial responsibilities and obviously the administrative one. In nutshell, we need to make the system accountable. Right now the system is not accountable.
I'll end with that note. Right now the system is not accountable. The need of the hour is to make the system accountable. We'll leave it at that. Thank you very much to all our guests. I think there were some great ideas that came forth on what is wrong with the current set of examinations, the manner in which it's being conducted, the agency that conducts it, and how to fix accountability therein.